listening to Cassphere Podcast.
Welcome back to cassphere Podcast, your daily dose of AI news, technical knowledge, and everything in life. New episodes uploaded every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Truffle.
And I'm Olive.
Today we're diving deep into the world of Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. You want to understand this guy who's shaping the future of AI? And we're here to unpack his story. We're going to start with his early life, explore his journey through the tech world, and even touch on his personal life.
It's interesting because despite his current position of power, Altman's upbringing wasn't exactly what you'd expect from a tech mogul.
Okay, so what's the real story?
Altman grew up in suburban St. Louis. His family was all about intellectual games and competition. Think calculating square roots at dinner or playing intense rounds of 20 questions. It wasn't your average family game night.
So a childhood that fostered a love of problem solving and maybe a bit of competitive spirit?
Definitely. And this environment seems to have played a big role in his early fascination with technology. We're talking about a kid who fixed the family VCR at 3 years old and got his first Mac at 8. He's even said getting that Mac was a pivotal moment in his life.
Wow, fixing a VCR at 3? I could barely tie my shoes at that age. But it sounds like his family played a huge part in nurturing those interests rather than it just being about raw genius.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind as we look at his path. Now, he did drop out of Stanford's computer science program, which is a pretty bold move for someone considered a rising star.
It makes you wonder if maybe he felt traditional education wasn't the right fit for him.
Yeah.
He seems like someone who likes to forge his own path.
Absolutely. And that independent streak definitely shows up in his career. His first company, Looped, was a location-based social networking app. Remember, this was way before location sharing was commonplace. It was successful enough to get acquired, and Altman walked away with $5 million.
That's a pretty impressive start. Most people would be happy to retire on that. What did he do next?
Well, instead of retiring to a beach somewhere, he co-founded a venture fund called Hydrazine Capital with Peter Thiel. Talk about a power duo. This shows he was already thinking beyond just building his own company. He was interested in fostering the growth of the entire tech ecosystem.
So from building apps to investing in them, it sounds like he had a pretty clear vision from early on.
He did, but he also recognized the value of taking a break after a few years in the fast-paced startup world. Altman took a year-long sabbatical. He traveled, visited an ashram, and really focused on personal growth.
That's fascinating. I wonder if that time for reflection shaped his approach to work and leadership later on. It shows he's not just a workaholic robot. There's a thoughtful side to him, too.
It definitely seems like that experience had an impact. When he returned, he joined Y Combinator, one of the most influential startup accelerators in the world, eventually becoming president. This was a pivotal moment where he moved from building companies to helping countless others launch their own.
Y Combinator is like a launch pad for tech giants. Airbnb, Dropbox, Stripe, they all got their start there. What was his approach to mentoring these startups?
He had a specific focus identifying startups with massive potential, what he called ambition, insularity, and scale. He wasn't just looking for good ideas, he was looking for world-changing ideas. He even tracked founders' email response times, believing it revealed their work ethic.
So not just judging the idea itself, but looking for those subtle signs of dedication and drive in the founders makes sense if you're betting on the people behind the company.
Exactly. And it's worth mentioning that during this time, Altman also briefly considered a run for California governor. He even had a platform called the United Slate, focusing on technology, economic fairness, and personal liberty.
So he wasn't content with just influencing the tech world. He was thinking about shaping policy, too. But ultimately, his ambitions led him down a different path.
That's right. The real turning point came with the co-founding of OpenAI.
That's where things get really interesting, right? OpenAI is behind ChatGPT and so many AI tools that are transforming how we live and work. This seems like a huge shift for Altman, going from nurturing startups to leading the charge in a very specific field.
It definitely is. And the origin story of OpenAI is fascinating in itself, this group of high-profile tech figures. Elon Musk, being one of them, came together because they believed AI had incredible potential, but also carried significant risks.
It's like they were assembling a team to tackle one of the biggest challenges humanity's ever faced.
Yeah.
But how did they actually plan to do that?
They initially established OpenAI as a nonprofit, aiming to ensure that artificial general intelligence, or AGI, would benefit all of humanity.
For those who haven't heard the term before, AGI is basically the idea of AI that can think and reason like a human, not just be good at specific tasks. It's kind of the holy grail of AI research. So OpenAI was aiming big from the start.
They absolutely were. In the beginning, they explored all sorts of avenues of AI research, from training bots to play video games to developing robots that could solve Rubik's Cubes. It was a time of experimentation and pushing the boundaries of what AI could do.
That makes sense, but I know things changed pretty dramatically for OpenAI, right? Did they switch from nonprofit to for-profit?
They did, and that shift was a major turning point, one that wasn't without its controversies.
This is where we really start to see the complexities of Altman's leadership and the challenges of managing a company like OpenAI. Let's dive into that more in the next part. So we're back talking about this major turning point for OpenAI. The move from nonprofit to for-profit, it seems like a pretty big deal, especially considering their initial mission to develop AI for the benefit of all humanity. How did that play out?
It was a complex transition, remember. OpenAI's research required massive computing power and resources. It was expensive. They needed more investment to continue their work at the pace they envisioned.
So it sounds like a classic dilemma, lofty goals clashing with practical realities. Did Altman try to reconcile these two sides?
He did. He argued that becoming a capped for-profit company would allow them to attract the necessary investment while still adhering to their mission. The capped part is important. It means there's a limit on how much profit investors can make, which was intended to prevent purely profit-driven decisions.
That makes sense. But I imagine not everyone was on board with this change. It does seem like a pretty big departure from their original vision.
You're right. There were definitely concerns. Some people, including some early employees, saw it as a betrayal of OpenAI's founding principles. Several high-profile researchers even left the organization in protest.
So there was a real internal struggle over how to balance idealism with the realities of running a cutting-edge AI company. It must have been a tough position for Altman to be in.
Absolutely. But despite the controversy, this restructuring allowed OpenAI to scale up their research and development efforts significantly. And that's when they started making major breakthroughs with their GPT language models.
This is where we start to see the OpenAI we know today emerge, starting with GPT-2 and leading up to the current GPT-4. These models are capable of some pretty incredible things. I mean, I use ChatGPT all the time, and it's mind-blowing how human-like the text generation is.
It's truly remarkable how far these language models have come. They've impacted everything from creative writing to coding to how we access information online. And ChatGPT really did make AI accessible to the masses. Suddenly, anyone could interact with an AI that seemed intelligent and could hold a conversation.
And with that widespread adoption came more attention, right? Including a lot of scrutiny about the potential dangers of AI.
Yeah.
The very thing Altman himself had been warning about.
Exactly. Altman has consistently called for responsible AI development and careful regulation. He's been very clear about the potential risks AI poses if it's not handled properly. He's even compared it to the development of nuclear weapons, drawing parallels to Oppenheimer and the ethical dilemmas faced by scientists during the Manhattan Project.
That's a pretty heavy comparison. It really highlights the weight of responsibility Altman feels. But is that comparison really apt? Are the risks of AI comparable to nuclear weapons?
It's certainly debatable. Some experts argue that the comparison is overblown, while others believe AI poses an existential threat that we need to take seriously. Altman seems to fall into the latter camp. He believes that while AI has the potential to solve some of humanity's biggest challenges, it could also be our undoing if we're not careful.
So it's not just about building powerful AI. It's about ensuring it's aligned with human values and doesn't pose an existential risk. That's a pretty big task.
Yeah.
What concrete steps has Altman proposed to address these concerns?
Well, he's been a vocal advocate for global cooperation on AI regulation. He's argued that we need international agreements to prevent an AI arms race and ensure AI is developed safely and ethically. He's also called for more research into AI safety and alignment, essentially trying to ensure that AI systems understand and follow human intentions.
Those are some pretty big picture solutions. But what about the more immediate concerns, like the impact of AI on jobs? AI is already automating tasks that were previously done by humans, and that trend is only going to accelerate.
That's right. Altman has acknowledged that AI will likely displace many jobs. He's even expressed support for ideas like universal basic income as a way to address potential economic disruption caused by AI.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we as a society adapt to the changes AI will bring. And this all ties back to Altman's leadership. What kind of leader is he? How does he approach these complex issues?
He's a fascinating mix of tech, visionary, and pragmatic leader. He's incredibly driven and ambitious, yet also seems deeply aware of the ethical considerations surrounding AI. He's someone who's comfortable with both the technical details and the bigger picture societal implications.
That makes sense, given his background from building companies to investing in startups to leading the charge in AI. He's seen the tech world from multiple perspectives. But perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of Altman's story is the recent drama surrounding his brief removal and then reinstatement as CEO of OpenAI. That's a whole other chapter in the saga.
It certainly is, and it reveals a lot about the internal dynamics at OpenAI, the power struggles and the competing visions for the future of AI. But before we get into that, let's shift gears and explore Altman's personal life a bit. It's often overshadowed by his professional achievements, but it offers some valuable insights into the man behind the AI revolution.
I'm all for that. After all, even tech titans have lives outside of their work, right? It's a good reminder that these aren't just one-dimensional figures. They're complex human beings just like the rest of us. So we've covered Sam Altman's journey from his childhood fascination with technology to his leadership at OpenAI, but now I'm curious to learn more about the man behind the headlines. What can you tell us about his personal life?
Well, he's notoriously private, but we do have glimpses that offer some interesting insights for starters. His long-term relationship with Oliver Mullerin gives us a peek into a side of him we don't often see. It's a reminder that even tech titans have lives beyond algorithms and venture capital.
It's easy to forget that these people have personal lives and relationships just like the rest of us. It makes them seem more human, more relatable.
Exactly. And their desire to have a large family also adds another dimension. It speaks to a certain grounding, a desire for normalcy amidst the extraordinary demands of his career.
It's fascinating how these personal details can sometimes reveal more about a person's values and motivations than their professional achievements. It's like seeing a different side of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And speaking of puzzles, Altman's relationship with his siblings, particularly his younger sister Annie, is a particularly intriguing piece.
I remember you mentioning that earlier. It sounded like there was some tension there.
There is. Annie is an artist, and she's spoken about feeling like an outsider in her own family, especially compared to her highly successful brother. It's a dynamic that many people can relate to, that feeling of not quite fitting in, especially when your family is defined by a particular set of values or achievements.
It's a reminder that even within families, there could be vast differences in perspectives and priorities, and it sounds like those differences have created some friction between Sam and Annie.
They have. Annie has struggled with health and financial issues, and there have been public disagreements about Sam's level of support. She's even accused him of prioritizing his work and his grand vision for the future over the needs of his own family.
That's a difficult situation. It's hard to know the full story without hearing both sides, but it does raise questions about how Sam balances his demanding career and ambitions with his personal relationships.
It does. And then there's the story about Annie singing a song she wrote for Sam and his friends, and he just gets up and leaves in the middle of her performance. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about their sometimes strained connection.
That must have been hurtful for Annie. It's like their different worlds, their different ways of seeing things just couldn't quite bridge the gap.
Exactly. And to add another layer of complexity, there's the story about Sam sending Annie a memorial diamond made from their father's ashes while she was struggling financially. It's a gesture that's difficult to interpret. Was it an act of love, a way of connecting with his sister in a meaningful way? Or was it a way of distancing himself from her problems, a way of saying, here's something sentimental now, let's move on? It's hard to say.
It's a reminder that even the most well-intentioned actions can be perceived in vastly different ways, especially within the context of a complicated family dynamic.
Absolutely. And I think these complexities, these glimpses into his personal life, ultimately make Sam Altman a more fascinating and perhaps even more relatable figure. He's not just a one-dimensional tech genius. He's a human being with flaws, contradictions, and a messy personal life just like the rest of us.
It's a good reminder that even those who seem to have it all figured out are still navigating the same complexities of life that we all are.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Sam Altman, I think it's important to remember that he's still a work in progress. He's constantly evolving, learning, and wrestling with the implications of the technology he's building.
It's been an incredibly insightful journey exploring his life and career. We've seen his triumphs, his struggles, his ambitions, and his vulnerabilities.
And as AI continues to advance at an unprecedented pace, it will be fascinating to see how Altman navigates the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Will he be able to balance his drive for innovation with the ethical considerations surrounding AI? Will he be able to build a future where AI benefits all of humanity? Or will it exacerbate existing inequalities and create new ones? Only time will tell.
One thing's for sure, Sam Altman is a figure who will continue to captivate our attention, provoke debate, and shape the future in profound ways.
And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring, questioning, and forming your own conclusions about this enigmatic figure.
And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Cassphere Podcast,
where we explore AI, news, technical knowledge, and everything in life.
New episodes every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.